Meditations on a year of high consequence, day 8. But this is video 4. And it's also February 17th, first day of the fire horse, Chinese New Year. And I think that's a great metaphor, and I'm really feeling it. Let's not talk about whether any of that's real, but let's consider the fact that we really need to hit the ground running in my visioning of how things need to move. And I'm not satisfied with what I've said so far. I know I'm talking to myself, mostly notes to myself in the one mind, but also trying to reach the Intrepid Citizens Council. We have some bottlenecks in terms of getting things to happen. And but one of them also is a bottleneck of communicating certain concepts with the right words. And that's what I'm trying to, at this point, I've got a couple more weeks before things can really start moving on the ground with respect to some of my allies and partners and the way the year moves into spring and all. And I'm trying to get to those last few breakthrough thoughts that I think I haven't quite expressed yet, because there's some things that I think we can do that are simple. There are some concepts that I think are simple that'll bring us back to a place where all of us can do something about the situation, which right now everybody's seeing it as somehow we have to change the politics because it's all the people in power doing things to us. And in fact, most people are in a situation where they don't see where their agency is. They just have to go to work. Agency, ability to do things and have influence on circumstances and such. And we think really all we can do is take care of our own personal lives, and that's true. That's what we need to focus on first. But then it builds out. You need to have responsibility for your community. It turns out that's something we kind of skipped in the modern world. But I want to get to what we can maybe do, because we're in a place where things need to break, and yet we're really stuck. And so the people that make things change, you think politics makes things change? Politics is a really slow way of doing anything, and it captures everybody's imagination because it's dramatic and and you can move large energies that way, but uh, that's not what sets the tone for the logic of the society. And the idea that there's any elites that really are in charge. At this point, the elites are just kind of treading water and trying to keep things going for a little while longer. And really, all the ways that people have to analyze things are stuck in the old paradigm of like continued growth. We need to everybody just make a little more money, pay off all their individual debts. Never mind that collectively, when we're all doing that, it amounts to this huge overuse of resources and inefficient and just not wise production. We're making things nobody, you know what I mean, way beyond what we really could be using if we were intelligent about it. And all this in the abstract makes sense, but how does it become something we're doing when on a daily basis, most people just have to take care of their current bills and go to their commitments? And then you've got the idea that government is going to step in and by taxing the economy, you're going to create a safety net. Hey, it's just so convoluted. And it's easy to see how people with good intentions are caught up in two sides of something that needs to come together to be effective. But for the moment, you've got the right defending the idea that, look, we have to make things work on the ground for real in terms of businesses that function without all this. If we're going to take care of the larger picture, there has to be a logic to do it intrinsically. Because if the way we're going to do it is by trying to enforce through bureaucracies and governments, that's the left approach that I think has proven bankrupt. And so again, I'm going into the abstract analysis thing, which I've done many times. I've been kind of trying to address myself in the one mind towards the idea that I'm going to have a presentation of a strategy document and get some people working with me, because there's bottlenecks that are kind of tricky to address. There's some things that happen naturally and organically. There's other things that are incentivized by the current institutions. In terms of the current institutions, the fastest way to change anything is businesses. They can decide to do a different policy overnight and things start changing. But the activists that want to believe the left-wing values of taking care of everybody and having it be a fair playing field But then, that's where we want to reach. The high ground of the left is that. The low ground is that we're going to enforce it on people that don't quite understand yet and think of them as greedy. But so we have to get a government to make them do things. And I'm reiterating so much. And the right wing, the high ground is we have to do things for real and make these resources actual. Now, the low ground of the right is we only have to take care of ourselves and our family, and everything else can fall into place. Well, we have to be responsible on a greater level, but it does have to start with the foundation that the right is suggesting. So the fact that the left got stopped politically in the United States, and that we have 3 years of possibly new ventures or expanding of old ventures, and they're trying to bring back industrialization and production and all that. And if we just keep it in those old boxes, first of all, that's going to happen. It's all just going to happen. And what I'm talking about is what a vanguard can do to start creating models. I want to be clear because people might think I'm imagining some things that could never happen. I'm imagining some things that could happen on a local scale and in virtual world as well. Now AI can possibly describe what would happen if we started, contextualizing people's jobs and businesses. I think, as I say, I think the way to do it is in a two. How do you get there gradually? How do you get there at all? Uh, because the left wing approach would be to, decide we need to enforce certain values, and that's what's going on. That is what is happening. That's going to continue to happen. But now there's all this deregulation, and the left is freaking out. Well, what about the left people with left wing values getting involved in some of these new ventures and informing them on the ground of the intrinsic need to do it right and be good with the greater ecologies, both of the environment and the planet and the biodiversities, which have to be sustained, and also the fact that you want to be the ecology of human is community. That's where it makes sense. Uh, the idea that we want to bring it back to a co-op ownership class, and it could be done in the market, sort of incrementally, as it becomes possible. But if people understand that it needs to happen really quickly, uh, because things are going to start falling out from under us in the next 10 to 20, at the most 30 years, if nothing changes. And things aren't going to change right away, the way I'm saying, but they need to start creating models and visualizations now, this year. And there's a chance, if the right people understand the urgency of this, but also that we can calmly get to some solutions that might work and they need to be explained, but you can only explain so much to get them started because they're complex. Uh, the idea of having a more organic relationship to your resources and economy through actual businesses and affiliations with co-op ownership networks. That's kind of a complicated proposition. And right now, people are going to work at General Dollar, let's say, or Walmart. And Walmart has the option to just get what they're doing now. So the idea is you can splinter off an internal secondary economy that comes towards the co-op thing. And there's a bottleneck in that there's no real businesses that are doing that. So to start that, I mean, because you can get people thinking that would be a great idea. Where do I go to sign up? And there isn't any place to sign up. So there's also the possibility that there's things we could do just as if consumer unions, purchasing collectives, and other interest groups that start to, but so local, on the ground, accessible solutions and options. So there's a lot of things that could be more enthusiastically embraced that would make a big difference if people understood that we need to move to community, and these events that bring us closer together are not just entertainment. They're the meaning of who we are. And if we could also start arranging our economics in that way, then we understand we're not beholden to elites. And the elites aren't going away with what they're doing, but they can eventually have to understand that they're consumer, what used to be like random consumers, are now being informed organically from their own self-interest with options that I guess you could. The easiest place to start is with the consumer purchasing collective thing, informing that. And now, whoever you are as a producer, you have to adapt to an informed consumer. You could save on advertising and put that into real research and really explaining. And then for whole industries to stop competing against each other, so you have to have false advertising. The idea of guilds bringing businesses together. So in and working as allies and sharing the workload so that that particular function is handled uh, in a way that everybody can respect. And so they have, for example, roofers, then all the roofs are fixed, and now they can all take a big break and still be welcome somehow in the context of that they're fulfilling that function in a greater context of community, with all the functions being handled up front as a priority, providing instead of profit. But to be realistic to all these business people, a lot of the things going on now, otherwise, too, the geopolitics and all these nations. I mean, you look at the news and it's like craziness everywhere. But the craziness always comes back to people in their real regular lives not quite connecting to their own source of power, their own source of independence. And the idea of permaculture is something that integrates our own use with the land, and it's a way that just makes it's the opposite of monoculture. It brings back the logic of farming as a holistic ecology that you're a part of. And that's a logic of community based. You could say community is the ecology of human. Uh, it was, yeah, one of my, Jesus, what's it? The guy who wrote Post Scarcity Anarchism. Uh, I'm skipping on his name right now. One of my heroes, who says utopianism, not futurism, because we have to get past the idea that we can just solve it technologically, each of us staying in our own little fantasy of we're going to have a profession and expand our knowledge and um, do things independently from the context of a planet with a greater ecology, from the context of our communities of resource and integrity. So my point is, this keeps getting abstract, and I want to say there's got to be a breakthrough of getting it, of communication, that explains it. But then there's got to be breakthroughs of options available. And if you just look, that's why we're going to just try to take it to like Crawfordville here, the little town nearby, which is mostly kind of right wing and small businesses. And then you got Tallahassee, which is the government of Florida, and there's left wing organizations and left wing politicians and right wing politicians. And the idea is that what I'm suggesting is an approach that's philosophical, but it becomes something that informs people just coming together in community events. Because how do you follow up by gathering friends into new ventures? There could be new businesses that specialize in getting friends together on grounding some of their resources. To me, the obvious thing is all the extra land can be turned into permaculture farms that at least provide some of the food so people can spend less on food. But other options like that, and then you get to things where you're the education system is crashing. So can you design businesses that cater to the idea of all these students with degrees but do not have real jobs in those fields? So then you have a business that gets resources to people, but it involves working a little bit on the farm, working a little bit on the other aspects that maintain these resources. And so that means that we're getting past the idea that there's certain jobs that are beneath some of us, and we're doing those in a flex way, um, and we can start helping each other without having it be a for pay thing, like massage circles, for example. You have one massage, specialist, and you get in a circle, and the first person you try to copy what he does, it's a way to extend the. I got dogs barking in the front. This is a whole neighborhood, southern neighborhood that is typical, and people are not. I don't know the people next door, and so these are things that right now there's no incentive to do that. But so how are there some of the local projects that can make that be more incentivized? And then people start feeling what it's like to get off the internet and to find the real meaning of life, which is interactions. And you'll find out the elites don't control that much. And the fact is that the system we have now incentivizes dark elites. So that shouldn't be a point of disempowerment. It should be a point of like, hey, that's what happens if you don't pay attention. So now we have AI that can help us really take care of all the different things. If we get on that diligently, there has to be communication. I'm still trying to reach breakthroughs of communication. So these get shorted into little shorties. The whole thing goes to YouTube, and it's slowing me down right now a little bit just to do that. But soon it's going to get to be projects on the ground with flyers to universities, maybe some art. And I'd love allies that could help me put this out and focus the whole project and make it make sense.